Behind this laid-back, peaceful facade lay the fact that residents of Sabang, like many other off-grid villages in Palawan, have lived their lives without access to electricity. The community faced daily hardships. Public and private facilities, business transactions, and household activities were constrained. Evenings were spent with candlelights, and when the candle melted, the day was over.
Ang ilaw namin nung wala pang kuryente ay yung tingki may gas. Yung mga estudyante nag-aaral, hirap sila doon mag-aral sa gabi. Tapos kain, patayin ang ilaw, matulog, wala na.
Noon po kasi ilan-ilan lang yung may mga kuryente dito. Kung lumakad ka sa gitna ng kalsada, matatakot ka. Dahil madalang pa yung bahay, lalo pag rumbing ng mga tanong natin, talagang mahirap dahil madilim po yung lugar natin. Nandyan yung kanya-kanyang generator at yung makina, talagang maingay at nakakasira rin sa kalikasan natin dahil ang pollution niya talagang usok.
To serve this basic need of the community, Sabang Renewable Energy Corporation built its 2.4 megawatt hybrid power plant with 2.3 megawatt hours of battery storage and started supplying clean electricity to the residents.
Karamihan talaga ay depende doon sa household level yung maliit na mga portable generator set na kung saan ang pagtingin namin dito ay isang malaking threat sa environment. Doon nagsimula yung application ng Sabang Renewable Energy Corporation or SREC.
Puerto Princesa is one of the largest cities around the world, also one of the most diverse. It comprises a very vulnerable, very beautiful ecosystem. So when they identified the Sabang area or the Barangay Cabayugan area, which was still within the city limits, but not connected to the grid, and yet a lot of people were starting to invest in the area, we saw that as an opportunity for growth, but also an opportunity to make sure we put together a microgrid that will take care of the environment. We want to make a statement that this can be done in any remote area around the Philippines and the world.
As a bustling tourism destination, a steady supply of power in Sabang is also crucial for the continuous operations of tourist accommodation, food businesses, and other tourism enterprises.
The Luyan Beach and Mountain Resort is a 4-star property located in Puerto Princesa, Palawan, just beside the underground river. It's been in operation for 10 years already. The Luyan has been a pioneer in sustainability, so we are very happy that we are actually supplied by clean energy 24/7. It makes the guests more comfortable that they are not only traveling, they are doing a sustainable tourism as well.
Noon, gumagastos kami ng 1,000 sa isang gabi sa generator. Ngayon, halos kalahati na lang yung tagagastos namin magbayad ng bills namin. Malaking katipiran para sa amin.
Kami mga ordinaryong tao ay kailangan din namin ang kuryente. Paano rin namin mapaangat ang aming mga buhay kung hindi namin kailangan ng kuryente? Ay yun ay isang pangarap na namin. Pangarap ng mga investor na magkaroon po ng electrification project.
Mas magiging akma yung pagkakaroon ng ganitong source of electricity sa isang protected area, sa isang national park, at higit sa lahat, sa isang World Heritage Site.
Lahat ng tao talaga na magkaroon ng kuryente. Kasi malaking tulong pag may kuryente po, sir. Masaya. May kuryente na 24 hours na yung kuryente. Maraming salamat po kasi maraming taong pinasaya nila, sir.
We have nothing but gratitude in terms of the patience, the engagement, the learnings we've had together to really bring this world-class project together and make it work now for the people of Sabang. I think now we can use that experience and share that with other communities that have similar challenges. And we're looking forward to apply that, building on this landmark pioneer experience here in Sabang.
Human needs are innumerable, and electricity is just one of the most basic of them all. Electricity may be a common word we grow tired of hearing every day, but this means a lot to the people of Sitio Sabang. So the Sabang project isn't just about rural electrification. More than anything else, it is about giving hope, empowerment, and a brighter future for the community.
morning and welcome to St. Louis University. WEnergy Global, I'm so happy and honored by the invitation of Father Gilbert Sales to do this workshop together.
This will enrich our practices and of course learning for other people.
So we're at the global level, the international goals. These were the goals of the countries, of the cities, and it was a commitment in the United Nations. The renewable energy, so what's happening in the sector, and renewable energy.
How we integrate all these activities that are going on, all activities that you do to get towards a green campus, towards an eco-friendly lifestyle.
If you take care of the ocean, you take care of the mountains, then you'll be taking care of Mother Earth.
Because of this, we can provide back the needs of this community, even the community.
Even starts with the institution. So what considers the responsible use of water.
They have their waste, they go to a treatment, and they should be recycled.
We have recycling, vermicomposting.
This encourages your residents. They have to be converted also to this direction.
How many years more we have before we lose oil, before we lose gas, and let us not wait for that time to let us start conserving it by going solar, going wind, going renewable.
There's nothing 100% sustainable yet, but we are getting there.
All right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. I'm greeting, of course, our global audience to a warm welcome to our inaugural webinar. This is WEnergy Global's inaugural webinar on navigating organizations through the COVID-19 crisis, opportunities to act sustainably. Now, first of all, I would like to greet our global audience, represented, really highlighted here by certain stakeholders and partners that we have. First off, we want to greet our friends from the Department of Energy and the Department of Education, leading the way in terms of education and energy sustainability, of which we will talk about today. We're also pleased to have with us representatives from FMO Bank, which is a Dutch development bank based out of Singapore. We're also pleased to have with us our current and future partners, namely Mega Sardines of the Mega Global Group, and other clients, especially from the St. Louis Group or the CICM Group in the Philippines. We also wanted to greet our sustainability advocates and champions from the private sector, the public sector, and the civic sector. Welcome all, and we look forward to this dialogue and our dialogue with you. Now, make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a world full of black swans, full of disruption, an environment and a new normal that is talking about a lot of this, what we call VUCA, the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity that characterizes these perpetual disruptions highlighted by COVID. Now, in this environment, we would like to see how leadership responds. That is a litmus test on how leaders and their organizations prepare themselves to be resilient, not only to survive, but to thrive in this new normal. And what better way to do that than having the key unbridled power of example of two leaders who have not only taken the reins of their organizations, but also established a culture of inclusivity to get the entire organization, its culture, its constituents moving forward in this new normal. And with this, I would like to introduce our two guest speakers for today, also our panelists, who are going to have an introductory video. The first of which, and first of whom, is Mr. Atem Ramsundersingh, the CEO of WEnergy Global. Let's play the video now so we can get to know his thoughts on the post-COVID environment.
Our loved ones. Yes, it is painful because it is drastically disturbing our way of living, our lifestyles, our habits. In several Asian philosophies, it is recognized that there is a cyclical and interconnectedness set of processes in our universe. One of destruction followed by creation, and then the maintenance of what is being created. We can see that process everywhere around us in many different movements and at different magnitudes. It is shaking us and it is shocking us. The COVID-19 virus is not destroying us. It is waking us up. It is shaking us and it is shocking us by destroying what we love most, which is life, our relationships, our loved ones. Yes, it is painful because it is drastically disturbing our way of living, our lifestyles, our habits. In several Asian philosophies, it is recognized that there is a cyclical and interconnectedness set of processes in our universe. One of destruction followed by creation, and then the maintenance of what is being created. We can see that process everywhere around us in many different movements and at different magnitudes. COVID-19 is pressing for a mind shift, a collective mind shift. If we change our minds, our actions can be changed. A change towards the creation of a different world, a new world, a clean world, a world in which all forms of life are respected by us. The Sustainable Development Goals and climate change agenda both were defined in the context of old school of thoughts and the older paradigms. We wished for a change of a better world, but our goals were based on our old habitats with our old business as usual approaches. We relaxed our thinking, not bothered to put in real efforts to change lifestyles. Now we know what we know, and now we are willing to deal with what we don't know, because now we have the willingness to work harder and faster in ways we never done before. So this process of destruction has forcefully put us on a steep learning curve to prepare us to find and articulate new functions and structures for our communities and our societies, locally and globally. It pushes us to redefine our relationships in our families and our offices. It propels us to redesign and renew our transactional economies and is paving the way for a global consensus for new values for our development and our existence. At WEnergy Global, we always felt that a wave was on its way. We envisioned pandemics, not only sea level rise, valuable land disappearance, heat waves that would destroy our valuable food supplies and our supply chains. We could feel that it was coming in order to get our societies out of their stagnancies that was killing creativity. It was there to get us out of bureaucracies that have been obstructing our progress. It was there to get us out of the hands of authoritarian governments hindering development. At WEnergy Global, we have witnessed how large money-driven corporations and conventional investors boosted large-scale polluting industries and helped to degrade our air, water, and soil quality levels, forming a breeding ground for diseases in the name of climate change and SDGs. The polluting industries continue to make profits, abuse the climate agenda and the sustainable development goals, and neglect over 900 million in high need. Not only wrong, but a disturbing representation of greed in our societies. We must pay attention to the interconnectedness of our actions and work on a harmonized development and of transforming crowded megacities, and pay attention to villages, new township, new industrial areas, where the opportunity lays to demonstrate new and sustainable models. The powerful in emerging economies and across the world forgot the over 900 million people who live in darkness and in poverty. We forgot the millions of small family businesses, those companies that cannot grow their business due to the lack of affordable, reliable, and clean sources. Their governments forgot to facilitate families to live in peaceful and safe environments, to live in a world free of poverty, to benefit from clean energy, clean water, proper sanitation, basic healthcare, and education. No bureaucrats or corporate bosses were watching or listening when we all were encroaching the natural habitats of animals, bacteria, and viruses. Very few humans cared for the rapidly changing climate, causing huge variabilities of temperature, humidity, air, and water flow. The powerful did not care about increasing and packed urban neighborhoods with huge pressures on the environment that became the breeding grounds for unknown and deadly viruses. At WEnergy Global, together with Clean Grid partners, we were well prepared and continuously learning on this ever-evolving situation. Due to our part of the job to bring clean energy to millions of families and thousands of communities and companies that have no access to electricity, we are ready at 3 levels. 1, our professionals, men and women from different countries, are working on engineering and financing plans to create a world where clean energy is provided in a decentralized and a democratized manner using the best available clean technologies to tap from local available energy sources such as sun, water, wind, and biomaterials. Yes, decentralized systems make villages, townships, new industrial estates, and even urban communities better equipped to ensure business continuity during events that require partial isolation or lockdowns. They are more cost-effective, reliable, and clean. Our strong capital base, that's the second, originating from Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, Germany, and Netherlands, from larger power grid companies and banks to crowdfunders to you. We are ready to enable the construction and operation of clean power infrastructure for communities and countries. We have prepared our technology and investment partners for many years to accelerate development and deployment of decentralized and smart power systems across the whole of Asia and soon also in sub-Saharan Africa. 3, our engagements with local communities through dialogues are aimed to tap into the local knowledge and experience in order to deploy power systems that fit their demands and needs. Going beyond just a light bulb and provide electricity for electric appliances, such as electric motors, to enable cleaner production, clean storage, or clean transport on land and on water. We promote the use of land for multiple purposes, such as clean energy, clean power generation, and food production combined. We help such communities to embrace principles for sustainable growth through which they can reduce pollution and consequently reduce the risk for new and deadly diseases to emerge. At WEnergy, we are ready. We are ready to continue with existing or enter into new dialogues, or so you wish, partnerships. Partnership with leaders of communities, companies, governments. We are ready to do so in 4 areas. 1, let's remove the unnecessary bureaucratic processes, meaningless rules, and constricting regulations, and pave the way for new policies, new rules that allow both clean technologies and smart capital to flow and accelerate the creation of green development. So pass the new bills, parliaments, now. Number 2, inspire financing institutions to join the coalition aiming at enabling the expansion of decentralized electrification of communities and assist with enabling and capacity development of communities to embark on the path of green growth. Number 3, push technology companies to redistribute their attention from making components only for large-scale power grids with large number of consumers, with large supplies and quantities, to manufacture new components or adjust existing ones to be used in decentralized and clean power systems in an affordable way, both in price and in smaller quantities for the use in, for example, microgrids. Number 4, provide business owners in the commercial and industrial sector access to clean electricity and clean production technologies. So stop blaming COVID-19 and join us. We are ready to reshape the world.
Now, with that clarion call, we would like to call on our counterpart, our client, and our most valued educational partner here in the Philippines, representing the St. Louis University Group, the Reverend Father Gilbert Sales, for his video message.
Hello, my name is Father Gilbert Sales, President of St. Louis University. Today I would like to share with you some of my thoughts and experiences on leading in the time of COVID-19. I thank the WEnergy Global for inviting me to this important live webinar. It is during these times that the question of leadership becomes more relevant than ever. Whether it is in business, government, education, and even in personal relations, leadership in the face of a crisis is undeniably crucial to ensure the well-being of everyone. In other words, I'd like to maintain why we need good crisis leaders in the time of COVID-19. That is how I would like to contribute to the discussion of the conference team navigating organizations through the COVID-19 crisis, opportunities to act sustainably. The present pandemic situation has already adversely affected and continues to threaten people's normal way of life. COVID-19 has disturbed social normalcy at its core. Things have never been the same, living with and coping with the virus threat in our midst. Moreover, as already evident by now, the COVID-19 pandemic has serious implications to organizational leadership. It has simply deconstructed some of our traditional notions of leadership, which are basically anchored on predictability and quality control. This crisis phenomenon of our lifetime behooves a redefinition or reimagination of leadership. We can begin with what we probably know or hear occasionally, but whose meaning today assumes a great significance. That is, in times of crisis, it is not enough to be a good leader, but to be a good crisis leader. The distinction has never been clearer than in today's coronavirus pandemic. Leadership is contextual. Leadership is embedded and intertwined with the circumstances surrounding its exercise. Its quality varies from one situation to another. Leadership, therefore, derives its efficacy from its ability to respond to actual and evolving situations. The measure of good leadership, then, depends on its capacity to adapt effectively to a specific situation. So under extreme pressures or tumultuous circumstances, leadership demands an eye for a crisis perspective. Indeed, a good crisis leader is someone who can effectively motivate and influence people to achieve a common goal in spite of what is probably an unprecedented difficult time. The distinction between a good leader and a good crisis leader has never been clearer than in today's coronavirus pandemic. This global crisis has been taking a heavy toll on people's lives for several months. There is a lot of uncertainty and anxiety in the air until finally a vaccine is found and made widely available for everyone. But it is precisely during this tumultuous period that genuine leadership is sought with clarion call more than ever. The dark clouds of COVID-19 continue to hover above us. In the face of an unforeseeable future, good crisis leaders provide a roadmap to people to guide their feeble steps. Good crisis leaders remain present to their people. They are visible to the people they're committed to serve. Good crisis leaders provide vision and communicate the same vision to people to enable them to see what could lie behind the horizon. In practice, good crisis leaders are called upon to exemplify calm and sobriety in the face of adversity, focus and resiliency amid uncertainty, and compassion and a spirit of solidarity before doing collapse of concern for the marginalized. Guided and inspired by these leadership qualities, I would like to share now some concrete experiences on how we have navigated SLU so far through this overwhelming episode in our institutional existence. We are never prepared for something like the COVID-19 pandemic. But this is no excuse to turn one's back on the more than 25,000 students and 1,400 employees seeking guidance from the SLU leadership during these early days. But if there is one thing that we in SLU have learned from the crisis, it is to continue to have faith in one another. By being together, praying together, and working together, we welcome changes as occasions of growth and development. The first weeks of the health crisis under a lockdown situation also brought us days and nights of anxiety. But as days went on, and with everyone assuring one another that things should be okay and giving his or her piece of advice on what we could do, especially to our students awaiting guidance and help, the university began to work from home and to move ahead by collectively weathering the storm, so to speak. The impact of information technology, the social media, and the other online platforms has never been more felt than now. The SLU top management has been regularly conducting meetings to assess the situation and to decide on important matters to keep our thousands of students and their families, as well as our employees, informed and guided about SLU updates throughout the lockdown. We have been issuing advisories on the SLU website and on the social media. In crisis and out of crisis, it is always wise to practice judicious management of resources. Schools derive their finances mainly from students' tuition fees. Thanks to SLU's tradition of conservative financial planning, SLU is able to continue with its operation and to keep everyone on salaries. The prospect of high enrollment for the new academic year of 2020-2021 gives us a reason to believe that things will be fairly manageable for the rest of the year. We in SLU continue to empower one another by giving everyone a chance to make a difference in the optimal performance of their assigned functions as work has resumed. Our people know this now more than ever, especially when there is a rise of unemployment brought about by the pandemic, and when opportunities for them to come to work every day is a blessing to be grateful for. While the COVID-19 crisis is absent in our university's strategic plan as a context to craft plans, the spirit of writing the roadmap has been animated by the desire to become more relevant amid changes in the educational landscape. Our faculty and staff have gone through month-long training sessions to help them prepare for the new school environment effective 15 June 2020 for the short term of academic year 2019-2020. At present, there are more than 9,000 enrollees to serve. SLU's avowed missionary identity and compassionate spirit have been put to the test during this day's pandemic. The fundamental question for SLU has been on what to do with employees whose jobs are considered non-essential at the moment because there are no students in the campus to serve. There are 40 plus tenured employees affected in SLU by the current crisis. What do we do with them? Do we retrench or terminate them? Or do we decide an alternative work scheme for them to continue their employment with the university during this period? For those who have opted to avail of temporary alternative work, we have decided to farm them out to other offices in need of personnel. Since we have adopted flexible learning as the mode of delivery of education these days, online and offline, our different schools and colleges are in need of additional workforce to help prepare modules and other learning materials to be used for the offline mode. In the meantime, SLU will remain vigilant about the development of the volatile situation we are all in. Thank you very much, and may our meaningful conversations as leaders in our respective fields help us transform people's way of thinking about responding to the COVID-19 crisis. That is the intention of this live webinar.
Well, thank you very much, Father Gilbert. And before we bring in our two leaders live for this discussion, I'd just like to put out some house rules to help us navigate this webinar much better as an audience and as a participant. So we can just flash, a one-pager just to show how our audience can participate optimally and also seamlessly for the seminar. All right, just the first bit of rules. I mean, you're looking at, making sure that you have an optimal and stable internet connection so you can participate, listen to the audio. We're going to have a very in-depth discussion on leadership itself, and we don't want you to miss the nuances here. The second thing to notice, so that we can have a free-flowing discussion later on, is that the mic is disabled so that we're allowed to hear and also not having technical difficulties with our two gentlemen leaders speaking. And if you want to share with us your thoughts and your questions, please do share your video as well. Now, your questions are welcome, and the way we're going to do that is you can raise your hand or share your thoughts in the chat box through the Zoom panel menu below, of which we will curate and raise with our guests themselves. And in case your mic is enabled, please present your question, introducing yourself and your organization you're representing. Go straight to the question, and our guests would be more than happy to share that. Any other additional questions and also copies of the material that are going to be sent to you today or was presented earlier, please email at webinar@WEnergyGlobal.com. Thank you very much. And without further ado, let me now introduce our two leaders for today, none other than Atem Ramsundersingh, CEO of WEnergy Global, and Reverend Father Gilbert Sales of St. Louis University System in the Philippines. Gentlemen, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, one thing to note after you gave those powerful clarion calls of what leadership should be is to understand your human side, because that's something that a lot of leaders tend to shy away from, the vulnerability of what happened during day one. So I would like you to share that vulnerability with us in terms of what is it like for you in day one when the announcement of the lockdown happened, when this massive uncertainty came to you. What were you feeling? How did you gather yourself together to be able to create that contextual, adaptive, and visionary leadership you both talked about? Atem, I guess we can start with you, and then we can go to Father Gilbert.
Thank you. Thank you, Quintin, and thank you, Father Gilbert, and thanks to all the participants online for having us. You have to go before the lockdown, and it doesn't come as a shock. Nobody has ever experienced a lockdown of this scale and this magnitude. I personally learned a lot during the H1N1 crisis in 2009, 2010 in Singapore, and how that took away the life of one of our engineers in a different company in those years. So when in November 2019, I read in one of the news online that there was a new virus popping up in Wuhan, I remember I shared that on my Facebook and said a short sentence: keep an eye on this one, not having an idea what damage this so-called innocent virus popping up in Wuhan would cause to the whole world. So one part of the mind was already alert, but not really dreaming of this scale of damage that it would cause. So yes, my eyes were already on that little thing in a corner of a news website, and I kept an eye on it, and it starts growing in January. And when around Chinese New Year in Singapore towards the end of January, it really started causing trouble. And when that's where we start asking some of our safety officer in the company to start buying masks and start buying alcohol for antiseptic use. And I remember some of my colleagues were laughing like, why are you worried? And I said, just do it. We don't know, but just be ready for it if it hits. Again, back then, there was no sense of panic or worries, but the eyes were open, the experiences from the past were there. So you don't want to take a risk and lose people on your side. So yes, we went down there, and that's where, when it starts getting serious and the governments starts putting rules, and we had to start with the orange alert in Singapore to measure everybody's body temperature, record that, and follow the government's advisories. That's where we really became very serious in following the guidance. And I must say, the Singapore government, from day one, immediately after the Chinese New Year, brought us in the well prepared. Videos were online, posters were online, you know, do's and don'ts were online, and the orange alert was called, and people were all there. Now, in our company, I sort of start losing a little bit of my orientation, like what's happening. Despite the fact that you had an eye on the thing in November, and you bought alcohol, you bought masks, still, the virus and the threats that were coming up were very much worrying. So as I said to my friends, and I said it publicly, that the first 2 weeks, somewhere towards the end of February, I felt like I was not grounded. I felt like, you know, I really felt like, what is happening? I felt a bit insecure. I felt a little bit lost. I couldn't focus on where this thing, how it might hit, what will happen, etc. But before we went into the lockdown, somehow after those 10 days, 2 weeks, I felt solid in where we were going and how we would enter into this trouble, not knowing that a lockdown is coming. But when the lockdown happened in Philippines first, where we have several of our staff, that's where we were ready. In the weeks before the lockdown, we start preparing our systems, remote communications. We start taking precautions on safety of everybody. And then when the lockdown hit, we were fully prepared. There was no panic. There was a bit of fear among staff. And Father Gilbert's video speech says it clearly, what were the fears among staff. So yeah, you know, I went from a bit of insecure feeling to a feeling grounded, solid, know where we are going, and how to make sure we are not falling into the trap created by the virus or by misinformation out there. And that's certainly not fear controlling our decisions out here.
Well, thank you, Atem. And really, it's been a powerful story to look at that vulnerability and try to start with that as a starting point, and then really use that as something where you design an environment in your organization to move forward. So I'd like to hear about that as well for Father Gilbert. Father Gilbert, I know you talked about how your organization has been resilient and how you've designed around it. But personally to you, how did it affect your leadership vision? And how did you steel yourself, you know, because you are responsible, you know, for one campus, but also a university system of 5 across the Philippines. How did you manage to get yourself together to lead?
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning to other parts of the world. Thank you, Quintin, and thank you, Atem, for having me in this webinar. Quintin, the lockdown came to all of us in the Philippines as a surprise. Baguio, which is north of Manila, was the first city that declared a lockdown. But initially, the declaration was only for 7 days. So we were, you know, a little bit comfortable and said, that will be a vacation of 7 days. So most of our students left for home, no? Maybe to just go and have a short vacation. That was the frame of mind. And also on the same week, I had the sad experience of losing my mom. So I had to go home, and this is in the first week. and attend to the wake of my mom, and also to the eventual burial of my mother. And during this time of having the wake and the burial, and after the burial, staying at home, that has given me time to reflect on what was happening around me, listening to, to the informations that came from many directions, and also trying to ground myself, on what to do next, after hearing all these informations, coming from left, right, and from everywhere. So after the burial of my mom, I started calling our managers in the university and asking, what are we going to do? Having this situation now that where we are, what are we going to do? And so we started to have our own Zoom conferences. And from the Zoom conference, we said, I think it is important that we plan and we put up into a roadmap our plans for the coming days, and probably for the short term and for the first term. And that is how we have, pick up the pieces, the shattered pieces, that we came from, and then started again with our movement forward.
Thank you, Father Gilbert. And certainly between you and Atem, one thing that you share in common is really self-reflection and self-mastery before you decide to bring your vision or revised vision out to your organization. So I think that's quite instructive, informative for our fellow leaders and also those who are in organizations experiencing rapid change. Now, I'm going to ask one more question before I bring in others from the audience. And one question is really more on, this anecdote that I keep hearing about, that the best way to predict the future is to create it. It's a nice cliche, but in a very difficult environment like a pandemic, the important thing is, how do you control what you can control? And the only way to do that is to have a strong team. And the best way to have a strong team is to make it more inclusive. So my question to both of you, and I guess Atem goes first, is how did you mobilize the resources, the inherent talents in your team to be able to co-share and co-create a vision of a post-pandemic organization environment?
Yeah, good question, Quintin. So what we started to do was we have a management team where we start meeting more frequently. And we really had, as the first point in my agenda, was safety, then the other things. And we start really making sure that we could also organize Google Meet or Zoom to communicate with all our staff members, not only through the management team, and listen to each one of their stories, especially in the beginning. We really make sure that safety was secured, not out of fear, but to make sure that that we don't get hurt or not out of panic, but really make sure that we follow whatever science is saying to make sure everybody is comfortable. But we also had to make sure that some of our staff for example, in Manila, who were separated from their families for example, who out of Manila, that they would be safe, not only protection against the virus, but also make sure that they are not victim of violence during a crisis or during a pandemic out there. We have to make sure that our staff were, that we have also staff who lost family. I'm very, deeply impressed by the story that Father Gilbert shared about his mother. And we had a case here as well. People couldn't travel and attend the funeral. We have a mom who got separated from a baby in India, and had to leave the baby behind. And so we had to deal with several of these situations out there. But what we immediately start doing from almost the first week. I send a message to all the staff in the company to start writing their personal story about what will you do the day after COVID. Not far away after COVID, the day we know, we hear that there is no COVID anymore, or we can go out again. What would you desire to do apart from seeing your family or having some nice food out there, or watch a good movie together with friends? But what would you want to do for yourself? What is your intention? And what do you see us as a company? And what would you want to do for the world and for your community out there? And we really ask all the staff to start writing that and send it to each other, and we start sharing our stories, and people start writing. They start getting their mind focusing on the future, the day after COVID-19. And I must say, I've been reading all of the stories of our staff at all levels, from all walks of life. We have 9 nationalities in this company, and it was fascinating. And I'm so proud to have read those stories, that people have a vision. They have a vision of improving the world, their community, their family ties. All these intentions shifted the mind from fear, or not fear dominating in their day-to-day life, but looking and hoping. I do believe that when you want to create a future, a desired future collectively, you have to orient all the antennas, all the minds into the same direction, not by force, but by inspiring people that they have a strength, and we got to use that bundle of light in them. We got to use it for creating a future we all share and we all wish to see. And I think that is what we did, apart from work and meetings and so on. But this was the creative part of helping to create a new future, our readiness towards it. I must say, the opening speech you saw on the video that I composed was very much inspired by what my colleagues, my staff shared prior to making that video. So yes, that is the power of focusing on the future, Quintin.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Father Gilbert, I mean, we'll get your points. I mean, I know we have a number of people who want to ask questions right now, but Father Gilbert, I'd like to see how you empowered your own diverse culturally and socioeconomically, how that team came together to help you build that future that you're implementing right now.
Within our school was disrupted in the middle of a semester. Actually, we were just going a week after we were going to have our midterm examinations. So, and then there was the lockdown. And after the lockdown, there was a long lull, nothing was happening. And so we started to ask the question, what are we going to do? And I think there was this general feeling that we should continue with our educational process. We should continue teaching our students. Learning should continue. And therefore, because we made a decision that we should continue, then we also plan how to do that. How should we continue? And for us, it was very important that we came together and drew the roadmap for finishing the semester, and then going on to the short term, and then also further to the first semester. So together, all the managers, the deans and the VPs and the department heads came together, we drew the roadmap, and then we realized that we are not adequately, prepared for this pandemic. But what we can do is to train the people who are involved in the educational process. So there are 1,400 faculty members in the university. So what we did was we trained them for the new, normal that the academic sector is facing. So training and training and training until we finish the 1,400 teachers. No, all of them were trained to be able to deliver an online classes effectively, or to send out materials to those who cannot be reached online.
Very admirable to have no team left behind, no team member at all. So thank you very much for sharing that real life example, Father Gilbert, and also echoing Atem's earlier efforts also with the team. Now, at this stage, I'd like to bring in someone who's coming in all the way from Europe, WEnergy Global's board members and a co-founder of our company, Konrad von Ritter, who is here to ask his questions and share his insights as well. Konrad, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you very much. That's a very timely meeting, and I'm grateful for those insights from such credible leaders as Father Gilbert and Atem on what makes a good crisis leader in those situations. I think one challenge you face in such a crisis is to balance being a follower of government rules and regulations and to be a leader anticipating and making your own decisions. So my question to you would be, were there situations where in your own judgment you wished to have measures which were stricter or less strict than what was required by the government, and how did you handle those situations, and in particular, what kind of source of information did you find to be trustworthy enough to base your own decisions on them? So again, thank you for inviting me to this important meeting.
Go ahead, Father Gilbert.
Okay, what kind of information do we rely on? I think during this pandemic, we realized that there are many sources of data. There's some fake news hovering all around us. But I think what is important is that we get our information from credible sources. For example, government has been issuing database information. And I think this is a very valuable source of information. We also get a lot from news, data, raw data, so that we can use this in our judgment of what to do and what not to do. Sometimes the regulations coming from government is not enough, and then therefore when we localize it in our own situation, we add up to what is lacking in the regulations of the government. For example, when they say these are the things that you should do when you open up your campuses to your employees coming back. But we think that it is not enough. So we have to add more to what the government has regulated. So these are ways of balancing what is mandated by government and what we think is needed by our institution locally. So to balance what has been regulated and our needs in the institution.
Yeah, Quintin. So, in terms of news, the sources of information that I've been sort of using has been, of course, the WHO briefings every day, live on internet, listening to the chief scientists, looking at the information they were spreading, not only geographical and not only the number of deaths, because that was fairly low, what was happening, but was really looking into the kind of reports they would have on, who are the risk group, not only the age, people above 50 or whatever, but also gender-wise, age-wise, the ways of transmission, to judge myself, what measures do we need to take more than what government is saying. We know that international organizations like WHO or like the national governments there is always a delay factor between the fact, the science, and translating that into a wide prevention measure. So I was really on top of it. My TV and my internet was 24/7 on the online mode, looking into John Hopkins reports, looking into Bloomberg, Economist. Of course, the Singapore government had an excellent side, the Philippine government information. So most important, this was the time before America got totally messed up, where we were looking into these international bodies, what they say about these different factors. One of the things that started to pop up was the kind of damage that COVID-19 was causing. Suppose that it doesn't kill you, it doesn't mean that you are okay. It could be a lot of things that you carry with you still and can infect other people. So that information was processed and shared in our team on a day-to-day basis, but also on a weekly basis to make sure that everybody is tuned. Like now, one of the things I'm following very closely are the vaccine development, but also the medicine for fighting the disease once you have it, but also looking into all these electronics that are being developed that you can put in your pocket and test your breath while you are on the move to make sure that you don't carry COVID with you. There's a lot of technology development going on. So yeah, that's the mindset that was keeping us busy to see whether we should add on the government rules or flex on, relax a little bit on inside the company or at home to make sure that that we are ahead of things. When we were still in lockdown and US started escalating, one of the persons I was really every night after biking I would follow would be Governor Cuomo of New York State. And the science behind that gentleman and the presentations he was giving was very informative, very interesting, very real, given the fact that in Asia we were a bit of ahead of the curve, and in America they just started, but the science behind the New York government was very interesting to learn about what was going on. So I think we learned in it, we shared inside the company, we even make sure that hand washing, that masks and disinfectants would be flown by DHL to all of our staff and our projects all the way in Palawan, to make sure that when those things run out in the Philippines or in Myanmar, we flew in things from Singapore and supply each one of our staff to have these basic things at home for their families and for them. So that is the level of, don't wait for a government to tell you that, sure, you follow that. Don't let fear be your guide. Make sure that die-hard science and facts from international experts that you could find in Singapore, US, Korea, and Taiwan, not to forget. There was not much on Taiwan on the international news, but through my Facebook connections with people high in the political arena of Taiwan, I could learn a lot about what Taiwan was doing to fight COVID-19. So those were the collection of 24/7 information sources that I was using for myself and shared with my team to get things, navigate us through.
Yeah, and thank you, Atem. And just to summarize, it really is about, data integrity, making sure you are getting reputable sources and acting on that, because your lives are at stake for sure. At this point, we have a number of questions from our audience, and one is a very relevant question. Will one of your confrères Father Gilbert. His name is Father Sonny Pierre from CICM, but it's a question that's addressed to both of you. And really, I mean, he's first of all notes that your institutions are really well attuned in terms of dealing with this pandemic. But because this is an ebbing tide of the world economy, the question he asks is, how are your institutions taking into consideration this uncertain economic structure where it really affects everyone? On your end, Father Gilbert, in terms of affordability for students to be able to pay their tuition and the overheads, and Atem, on your end, in terms of the pipeline of projects and the robust pipeline of projects that you have in mind, how have you factored in this disruptive scenario in terms of your plans for the end of this year and 2021?
Father Gilbert first.
Okay. We started also during the pandemic looking at the future and planning for the future financially. So we asked ourselves, and we based on survey and data, we said that there will be only 4,000 students that will enroll in our short term. So that was our baseline for forecasting also our finances and income for the short term and also longer, for the sustainability of our employees. But when the enrollment came for the short term, there were not only 4,000, there were 11,000 students who enrolled for the short term, which means to say that we had enough income to sustain our operations and to pay our employees until the end of the year. So a sound financial foundations for the university, I think, will provide for our employees until the end of the year. So there is not one employee that has been dismissed because of this pandemic. No, they stayed on and they will stay on in their employment until the end of the year. Hopefully, no, because that is also dependent upon what's going to happen in the first sem. But because of our, conservative financial operations, so we are very conservative with our expenses and with how we make use of our resources, then we are able to sustain our operations until the end of the year. I think that's how we will help also our employees, so that they're not dismissed from their employment.
Thanks, Father Gilbert. Certainly, it looks like you've built resilience into your organization to the point that you may have an adequate buffer to see this through, and hopefully the crisis abates so that you will be able to sustain your workforce throughout. Atem, I'd like to hear your thoughts, because while it's a totally different industry, it also involves the shepherding of resources, investors' money, and at the same time, the optimism of your communities.
Quintin, yes, I mean, we are in the clean energy business. We work geographically in Philippines, Myanmar, Indonesia, Singapore, and we have teams everywhere. We have consultants in different countries. So now you are in lockdown. How do you deal with it? You see, a long time ago, as a young professional, I learned from one of my very first bosses who went through one of the, it was one of the global economic crisis. And I learned from him in a very early stage in my career that you invest when there is crisis. You don't panic, you don't cut your budgets, you don't do stupid things to weaken your organization because there is a crisis. No, what you do is in crisis, you enhance your system. We went hiring 4 senior staff during the lockdown. We interviewed people from different countries and we hired and contracted them and put them on ready to start working from home through the remote system. So we enhance our communication, make sure that each member of the staff could perfectly work from home. So we invested into that. We make sure that no staff would even think that they would lose their jobs and hurt their families or whatever. No way, not in this company where we have big ambitions to create a better world to clean energy. We make sure that we were watching closely to the supply chains, the disruptions in the supply chain. Clear, in the solar industry or renewable industry, there was no disruption of production and supply chains of panels and inverters and all these technology components that are required. Yes, the countries were closed down. The ships were still moving, the planes were still flying, but less. So yes, there was a disruption out there, and yes, it led to postponing certain projects towards a later stage. Meanwhile, what we have been doing is really, with the support of our board of directors, with the support of our shareholders and our partners, we felt very strong in driving the enhancement activities inside the company, which means where can we improve? Where can we design better? How could we do all these projects? What can we do while we cannot travel and while we are in the lockdown? So we were, you know, we sent a questionnaire through halfway or towards the end of the lockdown and asked all the staff, well, you know, in this region, like, you know, what was the impact of lockdown? It was very surprising to see that everybody wanted to go back to their office, and everybody complained that they were more busy than ever in doing their jobs under lockdown and working from home than in the normal office time, because we were using a lot of our brains, we're using a lot of data that we had already collected, and we used that time to really improve systems and design and supply chains, and even hire people.
Well, certainly, Atem, you are living the adage of, you know, the old Chinese adage that this is, you know, may you live in interesting times and may you treat the crises as opportunities. So it really certainly looks like that, especially for both of you. Now, we are going to open more to other questions for the floor. So please type your questions in the chat room and raise your hands. But my question now, while I'm waiting for them, is, you know, how do you create that new vision? It's nothing's ever going to be the same anymore. I mean, we all know that the new normal can either be the worst normal or a better normal. But how you chart a new footprint, ethos, mission for your respective institutions, knowing all this uncertainty going forward, because you are there are a lot of people who are relying on that vision and that leadership. So how do you, what is your vision of that post-pandemic landscape? Father Gilbert.
For me, I think we have to have a clear grasp of the future, the clear grasp of the situation that we are in, and because we have a clear grasp of the situation, we are able to in a way design, you know, the vision, you know, where we want the institution go. And because we have that vision and that mission, no, where we want the institution go, then we also encourage and inspire our employees to join us, no, and to rally behind us to be able to reach that goal that we have set for ourselves. And that is, I think, what we are doing now. No, we are trying to get everyone on board. But this is a new normal. This is a situation where we have not experienced before. And yet we are able to surmount the difficulties and the challenges because we are all on board and we are all cooperating. We work together. I was really amazed because we have been training 1,400 teachers, and they were all there. No? They joined all the training sessions. And this goes to show that they were also on board and they were willing to take part in that attainment of the vision and the mission of the institution.
Thanks, Father Gilbert. And certainly that's very empowering to also have that built together with your team. Atem, please talk to us about, you know, it's a very complex landscape being not only in Southeast Asia or the Asia Pacific, but also in a challenging sector like energy. So how does your vision of WEnergy and the landscape that you operate in, how does it change, and how is it going to make it better?
Yeah, Quintin, I think the bigger picture for us more than ever is climate change. We should not forget, and I said that in my video speech, that if you look into the last 20 years, most of the virus attacks, large-scale, deadly virus attacks, in terms of frequency of popping up, happened in the last 20 years. If you look back 2 or 3 centuries from today, you will see, yes, historically we had pandemics that led to the fall of the Roman Empire, right? So we know that, but what we see on the timeline of history is that in the last 20 years it happened. And guess what? Science, if you look at the British Arctic Survey, their climate change research, you look into WHO research on the creation of pandemics, the climate impact is a breeding ground together with our dirty lifestyles, right? In cities, in markets, we basically create the breeding ground or the laboratories for viruses that could be more deadly than COVID-19. So for me, as a lead person in this company that looks for clean energy, more than ever should we start building a clean energy system everywhere where you can catch sun, wind, and water. You should use it, and government should stop allowing themselves to be bribed to promote coal in a world of post-COVID. It's absolutely something that I'm not afraid for a government. I worked at a global level, I'm still working in that, but I feel more activist, more encouraged to fight and say things that may not be nice, say things that could even lead to losing a contract. But who cares about losing a contract if a government is doing the wrong things out there and not allowing clean energy to fly? I think that is an important compass for us to focus on getting the climate at least less vulnerable or less of a breeding ground for or cause of creating these pandemics. I'm not worried about sea level rise. I never was, because countries like Netherlands can deal with those problems, so other countries can deal with that too. The thing is about doing the right things to the right parameters to get our climate from a vulnerable, dangerous, threatening, huge force of destruction to something that we can be resilient for and with. My other thing is serious promotion of good leadership. That's one of the things why we said, let's start this seminar series with this topic. It's not about solar energy. It's not about technology. It's not about capital. It's about good leadership. Look what is happening in the world where bad leaders are ruling. Look at the United States, what's happening. So lousy leadership is one of my crusade points in the coming years. Lousy leadership. We should say it. When private sector, when big companies, oil companies do stupid things, we should say it. Yes, let's be that activist. So yes, my vision is climate change fight, and make sure we fight against, or let's put it positively, that we should promote and nurture good leadership in the world, political leadership, local leadership, community leadership, corporate leadership. We should support that. It's not only about profit making here. It's about creating a world where we don't have to hide behind masks. That is what we want to create, and make sure that the inequality, discrimination, and all the other stuff, they disappear, or they become manageable in our living space.
Thanks, Adam. And I think the word for it, you think about the broader picture, it's anthropogenic. This is human created in terms of our destruction of the climate, but at the same time, the solutions are also creatable by humans. So I take your point, your candor and your point very constructively, that there are solutions there for the same people who are actually part of the problem, right? So it'll be good to see that going forward when you look at the solutions. In fact, the question that's come up from LJ from engineering, he was asking about two things. Number one is to both of you, is there a new interpretation of sustainability that's coming up that you've seen from the experts or from your own practice to focus on more tangible stuff like life cycle management and sustainable food production? And speaking of sustainability, how do you reduce the digital divide? Because now that everybody's going on the digital route, how do you make sure that nobody's left behind? So those are the questions that LJ from engineering is asking, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. Father Gilbert.
Well, for me, in the educational sector, sustainability is really offering, in our case, continually offering quality Catholic education. That is our goal. No? And all of us, no, in the institution, we are working together, no, in order to offer that as an alternative, no, offer that, no, as an option, as a choice for the people, for our stakeholders, no, so that we continue improving on what we have, no, even if there is a pandemic, no. Like for example, now we have a pandemic, we are in a new situation, but even if we are in a new situation, we will still say, this is what we will offer you, a quality Catholic education. We have trained for it, and now we will offer it to you. And then I think that is how we will see the institution sustain itself to the future, because we are offering a credible choice to our stakeholders.
Yeah, thanks, Father. And you certainly have that tradition to uphold, centuries of tradition, and now translate into the 21st century. Atem, please.
Yeah, well, the simple answer is, let's start changing our own behaviors, right? I mean, in my office, I have a clay pot and a porcelain cup that I use for my tea. I don't use plastics. We hardly use plastics in this office. So it starts right there. At home, you got to be aware that, in the supermarket, don't ask for a plastic bag that 5 minutes later you will throw it. So one is your own behavior as a sustainability thing. In that sense, I think sustainability has been too much in the lingo of big organizations and all these nice buttons of the SDGs and knowing the numbers by heart. It's not about that. It's about changing our behavior, our corporate behavior, our community behavior. So stop eating meat for 2 days a week. Just do that. Stop selling meat in your cafeterias. Two days a week. I'm not talking here about you reduce a lot of carbon dioxide or equivalents by just adjusting your lifestyle every day. So evaluate that and look into that. For me, that is the meaning of sustainability that became very clear during the lockdown. We were already practicing it, but during the lockdown, it really becomes clear that your waste bag that you're putting every week outside to be picked up, that bag is too big, that you can cut it down and make it half or so by using less plastics and less waste out there. So to me, water, food, and energy is the core of, and then leadership in the middle is the core model that is guiding me. Clean water, when you shave, is your tap still open? It was a bit of a shame to see the Director General of WHO in a video clip and some other prominent people on the planet to show us how to wash your hands for 20 seconds with soap while the water, clean water, was running at the tap. That's a shame to me. That's the wrong video to show that as a leader of the World Health Organization, you're washing your hands while the tap is flowing. You're wasting water. We got to become aware of those things, right? So energy. How am I charging my battery? Where is my power coming from? Where is my factory running using electricity? The whole group of St. Louis University and the CICM group of the Catholic universities in the Philippines moved into solar on their rooftops, and they are cutting 30 to 35%, even 40% in the case of SLU, cutting down their electricity emissions drastically. And not only the cost, but the contribution you make as an institution is significant. Now start with doing that. I know our friends from Mega Sardines are going to save the carbon emission, clean fish production by a drastic 30-40% of the solar energy will be replacing their conventional dirty polluting energy. Now that's leadership. That's leadership that realized that you can produce food for people around the globe, because this company is exporting sardines all over the world and is doing that in a very sustainable manner out there. So for me, sustainability, the new meaning of sustainability is don't talk to me about the international World Bank or United Nations type of language. Talk about yourself and about your company, and then elevate it to a higher level as an example. So that's the meaning of that. And digital divide, let me tell you one thing. When we go for rural electrification in faraway in Indonesia or in a faraway island, we do off-grid. We bring electricity to the 100 million people in Southeast Asia that have no electricity. When you ask them, what will you use your electricity for? First, of course, is television, radio. Second, they want to use a cell phone to charge a cell phone to play with Facebook. Now, first instance, it sounds like, haha, don't you want food and a refrigerator? It is information that people are looking for. And they have the willingness to get those devices. But if you provide the right electricity, clean electricity for an affordable price, these people, the digital device can be bridged. In today's world, it is not going to take long that every square meter of this planet will have internet connection. It's already happening with SpaceX and Tesla are building systems around the world that will allow us to have every square meter in the deserts of Africa or in the remote areas of Asia to be connected. What you need is electricity, and what you need is people to have a proper economic and social life to be able to purchase those things, and the cost of those things is going down. So I look into a world where the digital divide will be no issue in the next few years. I don't see that as a serious bottleneck. What I do see as a bottleneck is what I mentioned already in my first talk.
Okay, thank you very much. And you put a good overview and coming full circle. Now, I just want to end this note on really what you talked about. We are talking about leadership in a post-pandemic environment, and it all starts with the individual, as you like to reinforce. Knowing both of you personally as gentlemen of considerable spiritual traditions, very different, but also gearing towards service, I want to hear about your recipe for self-care, because that's something people keep forgetting about when they start serving their organizations, or they keep helping other people like the frontliners, or really you're trying to work for their paychecks. It's how do you take care of yourself in such a very stressful environment? And because you had spiritual formation on your side, both different, what kind of tips can you share with the audience as a closing remark? Father Gilbert.
Thank you, Quintin. I think it's very important during this time pandemic to take care of yourself. And first thing that I really do, and do it very regularly, it's actually every day, is a whole hour of exercise, which involves jogging and also stretching and all those. But more importantly, you have seen me probably in online, saying masses and also attending masses. But for me, it's very important also to be spiritually grounded, because that is the time of the day where you gather yourself, you sit down, and you commune with your Lord, and ask, what is your will for me today, Lord? Or what is your will for the institution is, Lord? So I think it is very important that we are also spiritually grounded, and pray, especially during this time of pandemic. Sometimes we do not know where to run to, but there is a God there to run to. There is a God there who's going to give us consolation during this time of pandemic. There is a God there who's going to give us hope.
Yeah, thank you, Father Gilbert. And it's certainly applies to people of many faiths and traditions as well beyond ours. Atem, please, we'd like to hear your thoughts in terms of that as well.
Well, I must say that, I mean, I'm a meditator since 1996, now more than 24 years. So I go into that space where I can refocus and silence the mind. Once a year, over the last 20 years, I try to lock myself down somewhere in a monastery. Father Gilbert knows one of his monasteries will be the next choice for me to spend a week in lockdown. Lockdown means not lockdown as in hiding from a virus, but lockdown of going inward and recharge my batteries and take the messages that I'm getting from the universe seriously. To listen to those universe messages, you've got to silence yourself. So 1 week I don't speak, I don't look at my Facebook, I don't use a phone, I don't use a computer, I don't read a magazine, I don't watch TV, I don't read newspapers. I lock myself down and I meditate, and I'm not asking any questions. I'm contemplating on questions that pop up and write it and leave it where it is. With that lifestyle and training, you go into this huge global pandemic. So you don't need to change anything. You just continue doing what was your lifestyle, which is meditation. And I must say, it helps a lot when you feel not grounded. It helps you to ground. It helps you to narrow all the noise and get the focus. But what was interesting is that during this period, I really picked up my exercise and bought some electronics to measure my pulse and my heart and my weight and everything. And it opened my eyes that data supported exercise is fascinating to read and maintain data. And I lost 7 kg by exercising. I did a lot of midnight bike rides in Singapore City, where the roads were quiet, the buildings were switched off, and the whole city was yours, while at midnight you are biking for 20, 25, 30 kilometers in the shopping areas where nobody is there, no cars. So it was fun, but it was also very interesting to physically get rid of all the stress and everything and lose the weight in a very fun way. I kept drinking my wine, kept smoking my cigars, kept eating whatever I wanted to eat, but more controlled and more timed and more data supported lifestyle that went there. So food, exercise, and meditation is something brought a very new lesson. I think the biggest gain for me personally in this lockdown has been losing 7 kg and wearing my old shirts again. So that is something, and that is permanent. It's not a temporary thing. It's a permanent thing. But the most important for me in terms of spirituality is I even attended Father Gilbert's, I saw at some point on Facebook, I saw Father Gilbert himself positioning the camera for the church, for the service in the church. He set the stage for the 5:30 masses in Baguio. And I was following those things from time to time just to disappear in that virtual church and listen to the priests. I'm not a church, I'm not a big believer and so on, but I'm certainly not an atheist and certainly not a person who avoids churches. So I found my way there and saw that a big leader like Father Gilbert was positioning his own camera to serve his people outside through Facebook. Now those experiences during the lockdown creates that connection with people out there who have a good heart and who have a good view on where they need to go. I saw SLU taking care of the students that were stranded. And during that, I decided, and I've talked to you guys in the management team, and I said, I want to make a donation from our company to Father Gilbert's work on taking care of the students and the food packages that were there to make sure that those who were stranded were taken care of. So yes, in crisis, you have to stick together. You don't have to stick together because of afraid to die. Self-care for me is not the same as being selfish. It's making yourself strong to serve others, protect your own health, to serve others, to lead others, to be there when others are suffering. So those are the ground values of this company, and that are guiding me, but also my co-board directors. The solidarity principle from a deep feel of connectedness with the other beings on this planet.
Yeah, Atem, thank you very much. Very powerful stories, and I'm glad we ended on that. We're going to have a poll in a minute, and we'd love to get your feedback as well. But let me wrap up basically by also sharing what I see as a tradition, a spiritual tradition that really bridges Atem's and Father Gilbert's world together, that we can learn from as we navigate this post-COVID environment. The first one is, and I'll do this in Latin. The first one is, cura personalis, which is, the care for the whole person. This is important for yourself and as well as the individuals you work with as a team, because without having that human side, you won't be able to mobilize an organization moving forward in such a difficult environment. The second one, very practical, mens sana in corpore sano, which is healthy mind and healthy body. We've seen it from both of our fit gentlemen and our leaders who are actually, beating illness and any stress away by taking care of their bodies so they can actually take care of their constituents, their organizations, and their environments. And finally, mentis vita pro vita mundi, which is the life of the mind for the life of the world. And this is really what a webinar like WEnergy's inaugural webinar is all about, which is really trying to find out what the best practices are from practitioners and from leaders themselves, thought leaders themselves, to actually find out what can we share with each other so that we can make sure that organizations, the people who depend on us, and the countries we belong to are really well equipped and well served by the kind of leadership that we have with us. So with that, I want to say thank you to everyone for your participation. You can email us at webinar@WEnergyGlobal.com for additional requests of information and questions. And now I'd like to begin the poll. We only have 3 very simple questions so we can get your feedback and build on the success of this one for the next webinar. So our first question for our poll, can we have that, is if you could just rate that for us. We're going to have live results. Please answer the questions and then we'll broadcast it as well so we can actually get your feedback and try to improve better. Okay, that starts now. Okay, we have 20 seconds. And our team will broadcast the poll results after also. Okay, are we ready? Okay, thank you very much. That very nice feedback. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I know we can do better. Next question. Okay, this is in terms of being constructive about what you would like us to tackle next in the next webinar. A lot of good topics over there, since we were focusing on our expertise. Okay. 15 more seconds. All right, I think we're ready. Great. I think we have a very diverse audience who wants different things, and I'm sure we'll tackle them in the future. But the one that seems to be the most relevant for the audience of today is sustainable investment, and the rest not very far behind. So we'll take that into account for our next webinar and invite you accordingly as well. And finally, we have one more question. Well, I hope, it's a hope that you will, but we'd like to hear it directly from you so we can justify putting together these webinars with very important guests. All right, can we see the results? Great. I guess it's unanimous. We will have another webinar in the future. In fact, we have a tentative date for that. We'd like to make the announcement that the next webinar, our second webinar, will be on the 19th of August, and with a topic that you have selected by a good margin, which is sustainable investment. And we're going to talk about refocusing sustainable investments for this post-COVID environment. That is going to be a critical topic, and we appreciate you affirming that with us. Now, on behalf of our partner institutions, our friends, and our leaders who are here with us today, Father Gilbert and Atem Ramsundersingh, WEnergy Global, and the CICM group with St. Louis University, I would like to say thank you very much for your participation, your faith in this process, and more importantly, your enthusiasm in terms of building the kind of environment that can help heal the Philippines and the rest of the world for good. With that, I'm Quintin Pastrana, the President of WEnergy Power Philippines and your moderator for today. Thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next webinar on August 19th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nag-close na doon? Okay.
Okay, Father Gilbert, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it was great dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Quintin. Thank you, Atem. Thank you.
Thanks, Atem. Well done. Thank you.
It was fun. It was my first time, but it was fun.
And thanks to the team, they have done a fantastic job behind the screens.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amazing work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Take care. Thank you.